Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to your chemistry class for grade 8. Today we are going to discuss the topics chemical species including ions, molecular ions and free radicals. Basically we have two types of ions, cations and anions. So under these topics we are going to complete today's lesson. These topics are given in chapter number 1, Fundamentals of Chemistry, on pages 14 and 15. So first we are going to start with ions. So the first chemical species is ions. In simple English they are also called ions. So what are ions? Definition first. Definition. It is an atom. It is an atom or group of atoms. Group of atoms having some charge or a charge on it. So it is a group of atom or it can be an atom which has some charge on it. Either the charge is present in the form of positive or negative. So the charge may be positive or it may be negative. So this is the definition of ions. Along with it, the next heading will be the types of ions. Types of ions. There are basically two types of ions. Number 1, cations and anions. You can also say cations and anions. For example, you can take the example of cation and anion in this way, that cations are basically those ions or atom or group of atom which contain the positive charge on them. Clear? While the anions contain the negative charge on them. So finally we can define cation in this way, then atom or group of atoms having a charge, having which charge? Having a positive charge on it may be called or are called cations, while anions can be defined as an atom or group of atoms having a charge. Which charge? Negative charge. So instead of writing a charge you will write negative charge on it is called or are called anions. So after the definition you have to write down some other headings related to the cations and anions. After the main heading of ions you are going to give the definition. Definition. Types of ions. Types of ions. Formation of ions. Formation of ions, and the last heading will be related examples. Related examples. So we have covered definition and types of ions. Now we are going to move to the third heading, formation of ions. So the next heading, formation of which ions, we are going to write first. Formation of cations. That is an atom or group of atom containing positive charge on it. So for the formation of cations you must know that cations are formed when an atom loses electron from its outermost or valence shells. And for example you will move on to some of the examples of atoms which are actually removing or losing their electrons. For example, in this case we have two categories. First one, atoms like hydrogen, sodium and calcium, while on the other hand we are making from these atoms ions, and which type of ions? Called cations. Now actually what happens, for example, starting from hydrogen has one proton and no neutron in its nucleus, while it has one electron as well, 1 E for electron. So having one electron, it actually needs one more electron to complete its outermost shell. This is the outermost shell, while this is the nuclear part of the hydrogen atom. So by removing or by losing this one electron to another atom, hydrogen acquires positive charge and becomes cation. In the similar manner, we have another example of sodium ion. For example, sodium contains 11 proton, 12 neutron in its nucleus, while its first shell contains 2 electrons, second shell contains 8 electrons, while the third shell contains only 1 electron. So as you can see that 1 electron is present in the last shell, the outermost shell. Number of shells are 1, 2, 3, and the third and the outermost shell is also called the valence shell. Valence shell. So sodium atom contains 1 electron in its outermost shell and it loses this electron. So by losing this 1 electron, it acquires or gets positive charge. For example, if it loses more than 1 electron, then 2 positive will be written along with it. And such case can be observed in our third example, and that is calcium. So the third example is calcium. There is an atomic structure of calcium which indicates that there are 20 protons and 20 neutrons in its nucleus, while 20 protons indicates that this atom also contains 20 electrons which are present in its 4 different shells. So I am writing the number of shells here. First shell contains 2 electrons, second shell contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 electrons, and the third shell contains again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again the fourth shell contains only 2 electrons. So the number of electrons present in different shells are 2, 8, 8, and the last shell contains 2. So which is the outermost shell in this case? In the case of atomic structure of calcium. So the fourth shell, this is the fourth shell containing 2 electrons, will be considered as the outermost shell. So due to these 2 number of electrons, calcium loses 2 electrons and gets the 2 positive charge on it. So this is the simple example, or these are the simple examples of hydrogen, sodium and calcium. Second type of ions are called anions. So I am writing number 2, anions. For anions you have to write down first of all the definition, then formation of ion, that is anion, and the last heading will be example. The same 3 headings will also be given in the previous, that is the first type of ions called cations. So under these 3 headings you will complete your types of ions. So what are anions? Anions are atoms or group of atoms that contain having negative charge on them. Negative charge on them. After the main definition, you will move on to the formation of ions. So the next heading is formation. That how anions are formed. So formation of anions. Anions are basically formed by accepting or gaining of electron. So you have to remember this. When an electron is gained by or accepted by an atom, it actually becomes anion. So gaining of electron in an atom is basically referred to the anions. For this purpose you need some examples. And what are the most common examples? Starting from atoms. Now you will divide the category from the atoms, formation of anions. So on one side you will write chlorine atom, or you can also write the oxygen atoms. Now as chlorine atom, chlorine accepts or gains one electron from any other atom, while in the case of oxygen it gains 2 electrons from other atoms, and finally forms their respective anions. For example, chlorine atom becomes the chloride ion having 1 negative charge because it is accepting or gaining 1 electron, while oxygen contains or is having, first of all, becoming anion in the form of oxide ion. What is the name of this ion? It is called oxide, while Cl negative is called chloride. So you can also see some of the terminologies like chlorine atom becomes the chloride ion or anion, while the oxygen atom becomes the oxide ion. So this is the main difference between both, that chlorine accepts 1 electron and having -1 charge, while the oxygen gains 2 electrons in its outermost shell and becomes oxide ion having 2 negative charge. So the next topic is differences between atoms and ions, because there are a lot of difference between these two species or these two substances, you can say. So first atom, and then we'll write the ions in the form of this column. We will make a column for differences. So under main differences you have to write down the nature, existence, charges, and number 4 will be examples. So what are the natures of these atoms and ions? So on one side I have written the smallest particle of an element is called an atom, while on the other hand the smallest unit of an ionic compound is called anion. Now for this purpose you must know about what is the nature of the atom. एटम क्या है? एटम एक एलिमेंट का सबसे छोटा हिस्सा है. एक एलिमेंट का सबसे छोटा हिस्सा एटम कहलाता है. जबकि दूसरी तरफ आयंस क्या हैं? किसी भी आयनिक कंपाउंड के अंदर सबसे छोटे यूनिट्स या इकाइयाँ या सबसे छोटे हिस्से भी आप कह सकते हैं, सबसे छोटा हिस्सा जो है वो आयन कहलाता है. जिस तरह से आपने देखा होगा कि NaCl, which is one of the most common one, NaCl. So NaCl के अंदर Na पॉजिटिव और Cl नेगेटिव इंडिकेट करते हैं कि ये 2 डिफरेंट आयंस से मिलकर बनने वाला आयनिक कंपाउंड है, जिसमें सोडियम पर पॉजिटिव चार्ज है जबकि क्लोराइड पे नेगेटिव. सो स्मॉलेस्ट यूनिट इसमें क्या है? फॉर एग्जांपल सोडियम कैटाइन है और क्लोराइड एनाइन है. लिहाजा ये 2 यूनिट्स हैं जिसमें से एक सिंगल यूनिट, स्मॉलेस्ट यूनिट जो है वो आपका क्या बन रहा है? सोडियम. और इसी तरह दूसरा जो नेगेटिव यूनिट आपका बन रहा है, स्मॉलेस्ट यूनिट, दैट इज़ क्लोराइड. So both of these units are combining together to form an ionic compound. So in this smallest unit can be sodium ion or chloride ion. The second difference is related to their existence. Atoms can or cannot exist independently and take part in the chemical reactions. Atoms आज़ादाना रह भी सकते हैं और नहीं भी रह सकते, जबकि इनकी ख़ास बात ये होती है कि ये केमिकल रिएक्शन में हिस्सा लेते हैं और मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म के कंपाउंड्स तैयार करते हैं. दूसरी तरफ आयंस जो हैं वो आज़ाद नहीं रह सकते, कैन नॉट एग्जिस्ट इंडिपेंडेंटली एंड इज़ सराउंडेड बाय ऑपोजिट चार्ज आयंस। और इसमें हर आयन अपने अतराफ से ऑपोजिट आयन से घिरा होता है। मिसाल के तौर पे अगर मैं आपके सामने लिखूं सोडियम आयन हैविंग पॉजिटिव, तो इसका मतलब है ये आयन अपने अतराफ यानी सराउंडिंग में कौन से आयंस कंटेन करेगा जो इसके अतराफ में मौजूद होंगे। सो दिस विल बी द नेगेटिव आयंस लाइक क्लोराइड आयन। तो ये इनकी ख़ास बात होती है कि ये कभी भी आज़ाद हालत में नहीं रह सकते, हमेशा इनकी एक सेटअप जो है या इनका एक तरतीब जो है वो इस तरह की होती है कि अगर पॉजिटिव आयन है तो उसके अतराफ यानी सराउंडिंग में नेगेटिव आयन होंगे, और अगर ये नेगेटिव आयन है तो इसके अतराफ में सोडियम आयंस मौजूद होंगे। नेक्स्ट हेडिंग, नेक्स्ट डिफरेंस इज़ रिलेटेड टू द चार्जेस, ईदर द पॉजिटिव और नेगेटिव। In case of atoms, they are electrically neutral. What is the meaning of electrically neutral? Having no charge. इन पे पॉजिटिव और नेगेटिव कोई चार्ज नहीं होता। While on the other hand, ions have net charges either in the form of positive or negative charge. जैसा कि अभी हमने आपको बताया, सोडियम having positive and the chloride is having negative charge. Fourth heading will be examples. For this purpose you need to write any of your choice, but here I have taken chlorine atom and sodium atom. While on the other side ions are represented, again chlorine becomes the chloride having negative charge, while here in case of atom, as you can see, electrically neutral, I haven't written any charge either negative or positive on it in both cases. While for representing ion you have to mention the negative and the positive charges as well. So chloride Cl negative and the sodium ion having positive charge.